Good morning. Welcome, panelists, for being here on a tough day. Many of our speakers have struggled. This is India. There is always chaos, and I think that is one of the key challenges that all of us engaged in building for a Viksit Bharat have to solve for. The theme of the day is building inclusive AI, and if our mission is to build a Viksit Bharat, a developed country, then it necessarily means that we need to improve the lot of everyone, uplift every citizen in the society, and the development cannot be for just a few. And we personally believe, and I think a lot of commentators in India believe that AI can provide that bridge. India took the lead in digital technology far ahead of infrastructure development, and this is something in the last couple of days also been talked about at Davos, where there's a lot of appreciation of India's leapfrog in the digital areas, and I think AI has the next such opportunity. Um, we have a diverse panel of people who are working in this area from different segments, because when we talk about uplifting citizens, it's various aspects. So let me first start with Lalitesh. Lalitesh runs Indihood, and he'll talk more about it, but Indihood is doing some great work on population scale measures, empowering citizens to be able to develop solutions for themselves. So, Lalitesh, what is your approach at Indihood uh, to empowering and uplifting citizens, and how are you enabling them with AI solutions?
Okay. Thanks, Alok. So Indihood started about 10 years ago, and we started with the notion that digital was becoming central to the world, and so will AI. I'm a student of AI since 1997. That was my PhD at Carnegie Mellon. And since then, I've been aware that this has been coming, and when digital began in earnest with Aadhaar in India, it became very clear that India is going to become a digital first society. And the central um, value provider in a digital society is the application layer, right? So you have energy, you have chips, you have the cloud compute, and then you have AI on top of that, and the application layer. Yeah. And the problem with the era we are entering in is, even though everybody is talking about cloud and so on taking over software engineering, it actually is not. If you want to build population scale platforms, you still need very highly capable engineers, and there are not enough of them in the world to do so. Um, Let me give an example of a population scale platform. If you want to build a bank for rural India, a bank for rural India has not yet been built. And why do I say that? I say that because if you take a loan product that you have to give to a rural person's income is not monthly like our incomes are. And then you cannot have a loan management system which requires a monthly repayment. You have to have an inversion where the bank asks the user, hey, what is your cash flow throughout the year or over the years, and then adopt the loan product to them versus the person adopting to the bank, right? um, when at the beginning of my journey in building Indihood, I had spent some time with the women of Seva in Gujarat, and they had this very interesting observation. Every time they implemented in one of their branch offices or one of the regions a ERP and a digital banking solution, 30% of their borrowers went away because the banking software they used simply did not support the flexibility that the users needed. Right? And the answer is not going to be build another platform because the world does not have enough engineers to build this platform. So we said, what is the answer? And the answer could be that if I take 4 banking experts and put them in a room, they will create a spreadsheet for me, which has all the math and compute encoded in that spreadsheet to run a bank. And then another 4 days, they can outline all the workflows and so on and so forth. and why is it that it takes hundreds of engineers many years to build a bank, right? Sometimes thousands of engineers. So that was the thesis behind Indihood, is can we automate platform generation, not just generation but evolution, more than generation. Can we also automate AI model generation, um, which is relevant to a specific vertical. So that's what we've been working on, and we have a proof of concept running. We have generated a bank with five, not software engineers, but five junior graduates from Indian tier 2, tier 3 universities, who built the entire banking stack. It's passed regulatory, um, you know, scrutiny and so on, and it has issued 1 million loans. And the interesting thing about this is that the loan products were not generated by financial analysts sitting in Bangalore or Mumbai. The loan products were created by the community, bespoke to the livelihoods that matter to the community across 320 districts and 22 states and so on. And we are, of course, providing this for a regulated entity. It's a startup funded by philanthropic capital from Mr. Ratan Tata and Nandan Nilekani. So that is the first use case. But now we are going into other use cases like creating a legal chatbot for women who need justice, and for a farming community in Meghalaya to own the supply chain, so that they don't have to depend on the Monsantos and the ITCs of the world. They can own their own supply chains. So that's what.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up to you before I move to the other panelists. So when we were talking earlier, one of the things you mentioned was the fact that it's not just generative AI, but there are lots of different aspects of AI.
Yeah.
And one of the things when we launched this report earlier today, a key thing which is coming out is the access divide, right? Because people at the low end don't have access to devices, the right models, expense is an issue, etc. So you had some interesting thoughts. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, I think we are. If you're talking about core AI for India, and I like to think India is the sharp end of the stick. Core AI for that works for all 8 billion of us. Um, you know, it is always possible with to solve the head of the problem with money. So head of the problem in India is can you get Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, and the top 5 or 6 languages and claim victory with 80% of India covered. But then you have, if you go to a place like Meghalaya, you have languages like Khasi, right, and Gari and so on. And these languages are not even Indo-Aryan languages. One of them is a Tibet-Burman language. The other one actually is a Khmer language. It actually comes from the Australian Aborigine root of languages. So the AI that actually works for all of us needs to learn by itself. It cannot be something that is trained inside data centers sitting in Palo Alto or Bangalore and then released to the rest of the world. The AI needs to continuously learn. It needs to adapt. So if you take India, India is not 28 states. India is actually close to 5,000 communities, right? Of about 500,000 people each with their own language, dialect, not just the dialect, but also the phrases they use, and the various nuances that matter to them. And if you take the top 10 use cases, you're talking about 50,000 models that need to be trained and evolved. And we are not never going to evolve and launch 50,000 models. They have to train themselves. And the other end of the element is not just the adaptivity, and it should be trained by the people themselves, not by. The training system needs to be independent of engineers. It has to be dependent on people. The final part is the cost. The compute cost, if I have to have an AI companion for all 1.4 billion of us, has to be roughly 1/50th of the compute cost today. So the memory has to come down, the compute footprint has to come down. So instead of taking 4 seconds to respond to a query, you should be able to respond in 50 milliseconds, and so on and so forth. So those are the dimensions that are required. And so some of our team sat down and figured out why is it that, and the final part is trust. I cannot have for my kids, it is completely fine to use Gemini or ChatGPT, where it will hallucinate occasionally because they have been to good schools and they've been trained sufficiently to judge, right? But if I'm creating a chatbot to give legal advice to a woman who is currently being abused, right? And that legal advice has to be accurate, there is no chance for hallucination.
Right.
It's simply not viable for that to hallucinate. So you have to actually create a completely new math of AI, which is independent of the current transformer models, which is hallucination free. So we seem to have a model generator like that. I mean, it's still in early days, so I can't claim victory, but it is possible. All I know is it is possible.
Great. And I think Bharatjan, who Rishi will be talking later today, is trying to address some of these issues as a sovereign model as well. So let me come to Mahesh. You have been the pioneer behind the account aggregator framework. Financial inclusion and financial freedom are the most important aspects, and this is something that. And then we were talking about to, the fact that the financial access, understanding of the documentation, etc., is important. So, what did you tell us how you are looking at application of AI for better financial inclusion?
So basically, I would say that the AI is already being used in the B2B space and the B2C. And especially when it comes to the customer facing side. I mean, for a while now you have seen vernacular chatbots, etc., but they have to improve a lot more at the context of what the user wants, what the profile is, etc., was actually important. So, actually at Samati, which has been implementing, the world's the largest open finance network, we have developed a tool called Vakya where an end customer is able to ask the tool about this framework about the loan, etc. And as you all may know that about the DPDP Act is about taking an informed consent from the citizen even before they share the data. So when you share the data, you'll be able to say with whom you are going to share the data, for what purpose, and for how long, or for what actually period. Okay, they'll be able to use the data. So for somebody like us, it may look very simple. Okay, but for somebody who will not understand English, or who won't understand the terms and conditions, as you all know, which goes for 100 and odd pages, which nobody actually reads. So the tool should explain to the ordinary citizens about what they are signing up to. That you are giving a permission for X, Y, Z. So in India, I would say for the BFSI, the AI is just not a novelty. It is about the reach and how it is able to increase the credit access to all those who are excluded from the in this system. To give one very new example, recent example now, the PFRDA chairman now has been changing and introducing so many new schemes in the now even for the gig workers, it was not there. So the tailored products. So but how will the gig workers understand that what scheme they should use, what will work for them? That is where, in my opinion, the AI should step in to understand the profile of the gig worker, the language, which he or she understand, whether it should be audio, video, or whatever, and speak in the language which he or she wants. Okay, that's when I feel the actual the impact you will see is will increase at the population scale in the country.
Uh, Very interesting. And so, what I hear is using AI to simplify, demystify, and reducing friction
Yeah.
when it comes to consumer services. And I think CEO of FSSAI was also talking about similar thing. But again, a quick follow up. See, you are as an account aggregator framework, you're dealing with vast amounts of financial related data. I understand that you don't have the authority to look into that data or tap into that data. But since we have a lot of startups here, is there are there some tips you can give them how they could leverage this framework or the data to build their AI models which can solve some of these problems?
So Lalitesh should be able to explain because he's an expert in that same space. But I would say like for any of these BFSI companies until now they had access to data. It isn't that they were not having access to data, but with the account aggregator framework, now they have access to the fraud-free data. It will be fully in a machine-readable format and it will come in real time. So nowadays, so what you see for all the models which they already had, like like when you're applying for a loan, for example, now the number of the data, the data types, data points, so which they're able to, actually get access to using account aggregator framework. Each of the models they had now has to be tuned, it has to be actually upgraded, and it has to learn and improve on its own as more and more data actually flows through it. So until now, when people were applying for loan, it was mainly the bank statement, which was also from the PDF, which wasn't actually fraud free. I've heard, with few NBFCs, the amount of fraud they see from the banking statement is as high as 35%.
Yes.
Okay, it is so high. And with the account aggregator framework, it is zero. And now you get a 360-degree view of the, because we get banking statement, your equity, your mutual fund, the GST data, your NPS data, and your insurance policy. So for all these entities now, they'll be able to actually give a loan not based only on your cash flow and actually the banking data, but to more kinds of financial data. So there, I think the opportunity is there a lot.
Let me come to Aman. So Aman is from MITRA, and for many of you who may not know, it's really the planning commission of Maharashtra government, so to say, right? And so, from moving from developers and data aggregators to state government, and state government is responsible for implementing a lot of programs for the benefit of the masses, right? And I see that Mitra has been behind a number of key initiatives, and Maharashtra is the number one state by economic development, etc. in the country. So, what are the ways in which you are looking at AI, and what are the applications that you are using for citizen-related services?
Yeah, thank you. I think AI for citizen-related services is like a very broad framework to discuss, but in a very narrow way of what we are doing, and is we are also kind of reimagining the way we are going to deliver services, as well as create policies. So on the policy side, one of the very recent initiatives that we are trying to take up with IIT Bombay and Bharat Gen is, you know, like wherever you're creating policies, there has been a history of litigations, there has been a history of GRs, a lot of change GRs. So the concept is to create something like Maha GPT, which I think Maria is also leading from Mitra's side, and Rishi from Bharat side. Can we have a system which can be where let's say the policy draft is being made, so you can say okay, what is the current guideline for this, and based on all the court orders, and can we create a system which can definitely say ki, okay, this is the current status of this policy at this point of time. And this becomes very crucial for domains especially related to things like urban development, where even an inch of land or an inch of FSI can be hundreds and thousands of crores, and every small change can totally take off the industry. Same in terms of the finance industry. So where you're not really building something on an existing asset, but to create a totally new asset, like FSI is like creating a totally new asset which did not exist. So I think that these are a few domains that we are currently working on easing the policy domains. But the more important side will be how do you deliver citizen services, wherein it's also about reimagining our institutional framework of delivery of services, in which we are working on two levels. The first level is as part of MITRA, we institutionalize something called a state data authority that has been set up. The idea is that all the data within the state should be in a very good framework, like the way we put up the Aadhaar stack. We are trying to call it the governance stack, but it's very, very early stages at this point. So a lot of defragmented data being collected by multiple agencies within the state government that should now become very regulated in the sense, let's say, the land data. So land data may be collected by revenue department. It may also be collected by the irrigation department. It may also be collected by some other departments, agriculture department maybe. But then, what the SDA will do? It will say ki the only one entity which will collect the data would probably be revenue department, which is the authoritative department on land, and every other entity should then be able to fetch that data from the revenue department. So that interoperability of data happens even from the government level. So I will not like to state the problems because everyone knows the problem with multiple sets of data happening for the same data point. So that will solve that. Then on top of it, you build the application, the state business registers, the state data catalogs, and the GIS layers, which then interact to what we are calling the application layer, which Lalitesh very nicely mentioned that that is where the real crux of innovation lies. Once you open up this data catalog and the GIS layers catalog and the business registers to the the private entity, the startups, and that is where the real innovation lies. They can create different applications on top of it. That is one of the things. The other sector that we are working on is how you deliver basic services to the citizens in terms of what is being developed as a golden data. I think Haryana was one of the first states to develop the golden data. Now Rajasthan now Maharashtra has developed that golden data. Now, for every service, now citizens should not have to fill the form because you already have so much data available for everything. So every time you're creating any kind of a new policy, like Ladki Behna Yojana was there, wherein we were giving 1500 to every citizen. So immediately we should have a system of eligible beneficiaries, and you should, on day one you should be able to deliver that service in a yes or no manner. And secondly, the feedback back becomes much faster. So we are also working with SBI Research to kind of have an analysis of the kind of outcomes that these women or these families were able to generate out of this scheme, which otherwise as an exercise would be very difficult. So I think these are the three broad domains in which as the government we are trying to work on with AI. So yeah, that's.
So that's very interesting. Actually, this is going to be very useful if we are able to tap into a common data pool, and therefore, most of the fields are preloaded, etc. I wish somebody does it for KYC. We all struggle with KYC all the time. So, how do startups get access to this data repository and the specific problem statements that you might have, which they could develop and then share solutions with you? And how could they share solutions with you?
So once we have the data catalogs, this is one of the main proponents of it came from Government of India when when NITI developed something called as the NDAP. The NDAP, I hope a lot of you know, or at least the open data governance system. So what we are working with is kind of creating similar data catalogs, but in a more structured way. While it was done, a lot of problems happened at the input layer. The input layer checking did not happen in many states uploading their data. So a lot of data ended up giving something called as null factors, and so it could not be reliably used. So now we are working on this project, which is essentially a World Bank funded project. So they have their own systems of checking every data line which comes in. And now what we are trying to do is that we are trying to automate that check. That probably will have to be an AI layer to check that input. And once that happens, then the possibility is endless. One of the basic things that I keep saying is that let's say you are able to build this governance stack where you get all this data. So now, one basic thing that we are also developing is parametric insurance. Somebody mentioned gig workers. So parametric insurance for gig workers can very easily be done if you are able to get a very good set of data of the kind of income that they're getting, and you get an IMD data stating, let's say for heat wave, you want to develop parametric insurance for heat wave. So you have this IMD data which says what is the expected heat wave. Uh, Heat wave is very well defined. Those parameters can be defined, and based upon all these data, you can provide insurance to all the uninsured people. That is one thing. The other thing is the way we give insurance to floods, for disasters. How do you? The third is when you are able to integrate the data of GIS layer. So what we are now doing is we are trying to extract data from the satellite data and integrate it to the administrative data. So then you are able to actually look at very at a very farm level advisory basis, how and what kind of water to be given, what kind of fertilizers to be given, based upon, there's something called as soil testing data which is available. You kind of are able to map it to all this data. In fact, this is happening live right now. Our agriculture department is actually working with a lot of companies. In fact, that was based on the BCG report that we had kind of given to the agriculture department from MITRA. So the idea is, till now the advisory is very, like, this might be a village with maybe 100 farms. So the advisory was a farm level advisory, a village level advisory till now, generated in public universities. Now it will be a farm level advisory. So at each, so you can actually get for your farm what is the best, because what you are growing based upon also the data of, there's something called as record of right 7 to 12. So you know that this is what you are growing, this is what you've grown in the past, this is the kind of atmosphere that's happening, and this is your soil climate data, soil data of your farmland. So on that basis, you can get that a very personalized advice, and that's all automated, because doing it in a non-automated basis is so expensive that it will not make any sense. So I think these are a few examples. I think at the end of the day, I also do not know what can come out of it, because one thing I always guide myself on is the way we built Aadhaar. We did not know NPCI will probably come out so well on top of Aadhaar, and now all the loans and all your financial products, I mean, it's all based on Aadhaar stack. Even this health stack that has got made up, ABDM, that's the core is Aadhaar stack. The I mean, agriculture stack that we are building, it's also based at the core on Aadhaar stack. The golden data is also based on core of Aadhaar stack. So yeah, the possibilities in the future will certainly be more than what we can imagine.
Right. Healthcare. If you want to build a Viksit Bharat, we have to have a Swasth Bharat, right? And that's the mission of the government as well. You are working, Sujoy, at Apollo hospitals, solving with technology these solutions, healthcare related solutions, not just for India, but building in India for the world is how important. So, talk to us about some of the initiatives you're doing, especially to deliver quality healthcare at mass level, grassroots level.
Thank you. First of all, Alok thank you for inviting me here, and shout out to my MIT classmate, Gokul, for bringing me here today. I'm very apprehensive when I come to institutions like this, because with my MIT professors, they don't feel I'm graduate, and I've been working with them, and they treat me as a postgraduate trainee even then. And that's what we have been able to develop over the years. I've been working with Apollo for 20 plus years, 12 plus years more as a physician, and then converted into now running 3 labs where we design, develop, and deploy clinical AI solutions. With the data primarily, which is there in Apollo hospitals, but then, of course, now we have federated learning systems, trusted research environments to actually work with several institutions, in fact, 40 institutions worldwide, academic and then hospitals as well. What we have been able to do is to categorize our work into 4 different streams. One is disease progression models, because we know we all have certain comorbidities. At some point of time, we'll all have events. So whether it is a cardiac event or an event related to kidneys or liver and others, how can we go about in predicting them early so that we would be able to do appropriate interventions with them? And then of course the massive work that happens at IIT Delhi as well, which talks about precisely going about looking at images and how do you analyze those images and then detect and predict. And now you're using technologies like visual language models to actually go about in either pre-training and then using self-learning models to do anything possible. And then of course the other one that you referred to is the acute care one. selection of antibiotics at the right point of time, which is so crucial. About a fortnight back, Prime Minister gave a statement around antibiotic resistance across India and what that we could do about with that. So we have some solutions around that. And of course, pre-anesthesia, surgical care, something around clinical deterioration, which many people build. And then, something that we have been building for 5 years, in fact, before November 2022, which is the watershed mark where OpenAI came out with that. We have been using natural language generation on our Apollo 24/7 platform to actually generate case sheet from the interactions that are happening with the patients and go about in doing that. So a lot of productivity tools that are happening. What's happening on the ground? Say, I just want to give you the example of the cardiac work that we have been doing, and now there are more than 3 million people, not only in India but in Indonesia, Latin American countries, Middle East, others who are using this tool. What we are seeing is that we are preventing admissions downstream in 5 years, 10 years perspective. Right, so which is a very important way by which you lower the risk of people having cardiovascular events. The other one is about X-rays and the work that we do with Google, and which possibly is one of the world's best. And we don't tell it; Lancet told it from a study by Stanford and WHO, where they went in to look at, can we look at the X-ray and identify if somebody has early changes for tuberculosis. That's now been implemented across Gujarat, where people are using this as a tool in that way. Then, of course, breast cancer work that I do with the MIT, where we are able to now predict 5 years before the breast cancer happens if there are changes, and then put people into appropriate, pathways and others. So with that, there are plenty of examples like this. But I want to spend next 1 minute talking about a very important aspect. We need to look at all of these capabilities. That is very important. I was from a World Economic Forum where I contribute for the last 7 years now. I was in Beijing 15 days before the world shut down for COVID. China had, at that point of time, 50% of their population's data, chest X-ray data, available with them in 2019. And imagine what they could do with that. It's not just about chest X-ray. They would have had lots of other available data, open source, for their brilliant scientists to go work on it. How are we building this in India? Of course, we want to pat our back and say we are doing good. But there is a gap that we need to understand and get that sorted as early as possible. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll end up using somebody else's, or somebody will come and build a solution for us for the rural bank that you're talking about, or the BFSI, or any other mode that we're looking at, or for Maha LLM and all of that. Or in fact, we are using them, right? And we know the security provisions for this. The second thing is, there are startups, people working in healthcare. Please bring the right people in the room when you design. The epistemological fault lines between human and machine working at the ground is a mismatch at this point of time. Big statement, but it is. And the reason that we have to sort out, I was in Lucknow last week talking to government of UP's fantastic program. And it was all about transforming healthcare by empowering people. And I didn't find a single ASHA worker in the room. And I asked them, why? So my last point is, yes, we will get technology. We'll have to skill human beings in an appropriate way. Because mind you, in next 50 years, most of us will live through 50 years possibly. Humans will continue to heal humans. How do you empower humans with technology is the important caveat that we have.
Thanks, Sujoy. We could have gone on, I think, in this panel for much longer, but unfortunately, I'm constantly reminded that we're out of time. Big headline clearly coming through is data, right? And each one of you has a perspective on data and how Shashi, in his talk earlier, spoke about uh, the importance of data. We had identified earlier, and we had an initiative called Data Dawn. I think we need to collaborate a lot more in acquiring data, enriching data, making it accessible and available to different kinds of consumers. So that's some food for thought. So our esteemed panelists will be available for interactions later. Really rich experiences, and therefore I encourage everyone to interact with them outside. With that, thank you very much, everyone.